This video is going to take you through the bench assembly process for the benches by baseball racks. First step is installing the legs. You're going to need the 8 6-inch bolts, washers, and nuts for each bolt. Also, use a 9/16 size socket for tightening. Take your bench seat and flip it upside down, laying it flat on its face. Lay the 2 deck spacing squares under the bench to help keep the bench level and support during leg installation. Line up the legs with the holes in the bench bottom so you can run 2 6-inch bolts through each leg. If you're having trouble aligning the holes for the bench seat and the legs, try rotating the leg 90 or 180 degrees until the holes line up. Make sure to insert the bolts from the outside of the bench running inwards. You may need to tap the bolts to insert them fully. Slide your washers onto each bolt before hand tightening the nut onto them. Then use your 9/16 socket to fully tighten the legs. Next step is flipping your bench over and attaching the leg strips. We included shims in the hardware bag to help level out the legs if the ground isn't completely flat. You need 4 2.5-inch light gray nails to install the leg strips. To make it easier, you may want to pre-drill the leg strips before fully attaching them onto the legs. All you need to do is rest the leg strip on the deck spacing square to help support the leg strip while installing. After this, it's time to attach the top shelf supports. You will need 6 2.5-inch screws. You may also want to pre-drill the top shelf supports to make installation easier. Use 2 2.5-inch screws for each top shelf support. Attach the support so it's flush at the outside corner of the bench seat. Install the middle support flush to the right side of the middle beam on your bench seat. After that step is complete, you can slide on the bench back and align it with the holes on the side of the bench seat. You're going to use the remaining 4-inch bolts, washers, and nuts to hold the bench back into place. First, run the bolts into the bench back from the outside heading in. You may need to tap the bolts again to fully insert them. The bench back and the bench seat should align to slide flush into place. Hand tighten your washer and nuts onto the bolt before using the 9/16 socket to fully tighten the bolts, locking everything into place. For installing the stringer, or the 90-inch 2x4, you're going to need to detach it from the pallet that the bench was shipped on. There's a tag on some of the stringers saying 2x4 needed for assembly. You'll also need 6 2.5-inch screws. First, line the stringer up so it is flush with the back of the bench as well as flush with the side. The stringer will have a tiny overhang from the top shelf support. This is intentional to keep it flush with the side of the bench. Screw in 2 screws on the top shelf support to hold the stringer into place. Make sure to screw into the solid piece of the top shelf support, not the longer thin strip. For demonstration purposes, we only started with 1 screw in place. After the stringer is installed, it is time to put on the top shelf. Align the top shelf flush with the front and the side of the bench back. You're going to use 12 dark gray 2-inch screws. There will be a slight overhang by the top shelf over the back of the stringer. That's intentional. There are indents on the top shelf indicating where to insert each screw. Start at one end of the top shelf and start working your way down to the other end. Both sides of the top shelf should line up flush with the sides of the bench back and flush with the front. Finally, it's time to install the side panels. You're going to use 6 2-inch dark gray screws. You may want to pre-drill the screws into the side panel to make installation easier again. Line the side panels up so it is flush with the bench back and the top panel everywhere that they touch. You may need an extra pair of hands or use something to help hold the panel in place. Hold the top panel in place and install a screw in each of the top corners of the side panel. Insert your final screw in the bottom front of the side panel. After this, everything should be complete.